So I'm very lucky actually to welcome to this new beginning and journey of the Good Stories in my podcast, Sandra Castaneda Elena. And I have been lucky enough to have her as a mentor during the Break series, and this is where we met. And to also have her here to talk to me about her project, La Negocianta, and not only about that, but about the whole journey. I want the whole story, and I want you to be able to share with me how we finally found our way to meet over here. So I want the whole thing.
Thank you, Pira. So you're ready for a long story?
Oh, definitely. I was born for it.
Okay, great. So I was born in very close to this region that you see around, so very green. And my dad was from here. My mom is from center of Spain, but somehow we were raised here. We came here when we were very little. We were born in Bilbao, but spent our our primary school, secondary school around here. We were raised in Cantabria. Yeah. And I wanted to study political science because I wanted to sort out the world and make it better. And I thought that was the way. My parents actually didn't think that was a good idea. So they put me into law school.
Oh, yes. You were also trained as a lawyer. Oh, my
exactly.
God.
So I studied law and business in Bilbao.
Mm-hmm.
But I still wanted to change the world. So I thought, well, what gets me closer to saving the world from a law perspective? So human rights.
Of course.
So my master's was in international law of human rights. And I specialized in development. So international development and cooperation. And this master's was wonderful. It took me around Europe, and I went also to Brussels to do my internship in DG8, that was then development, and lived in Nicaragua for a year working for UNICEF. Wonderful experience, but that was also when I had my first crisis.
Oh my God.
First life work crisis.
Yeah.
I was 25, and this was my vocation. I thought development, cooperation, international development. And at that time, I remember that we were fighting for the development budget to grow. So it was about 5% or so of the national budget, and we were asking for 0.7% of the national budget, so to increase it. And I thought, well, where's the other 99.3%, right? Because that's more interesting, that 0.7%. When I figured, well, where all of that money was going towards, so our commercial policies, agricultural policies, international policies, whatever, every other expense that a state has, I thought, well, I'd rather, be on that side and trying to change where that's going, because that's actually right now making the wound. And we're trying from cooperation perspective to put a Band-Aid on it, but we're making the wound bigger.
Yes,
with that 99.3% of the budget.
Completely.
And likewise in companies, etc. So anyone who's just giving away a little percentage of their budget or income or whatever to the good cause and not really paying attention to the big portion. So that didn't make sense to me.
Because it was basically charity, and it is exactly what I say. It's like philanthropy, but it has to do actually with like changing your whole mentality into being able to becoming, let's say, part of the solution and no longer part of the problem.
Exactly. That's it. So that was the start of that journey. And I was devastated. I was in the middle of Central America thinking, my goodness, I'm going to have to go back to Spain. I'm going to have to find a job. I didn't know where and doing what, because I didn't want to go to work for a company because at that time they were evil for me. Like, no, they're doing bad things to the world. So evil, no. And I didn't want to keep working for an NGO, and I didn't want to study to become a civil servant because I had studied so much in my career. So I thought, well, I'm just going back and see if I can do my PhD or something that can get me into the academic world, because that's the only space that I can actually work for.
Educational. So you decided to basically move from like doing little bits and pieces in a huge organization, obviously, but to say, okay, maybe I can actually change the world from the educational perspective.
That's what I thought, but I didn't get there because by the time I got to Spain, I met a startup. I met this startup that was trying to build the first ethical bank in Spain. So that was the seed of Triodos Bank, which is a European bank, sustainable and ethical European bank. So an institution that only invests in projects that add social value, environmental value, cultural value. So investing in agriculture, yes, but only in organic agriculture. Investing in construction, yes, but only in biologically ethical construction, and all of these things, supporting art and, theater, cinema, all the things that are essential for the human being to flourish.
And our well-being, actually, to flourish. And also to say, that was like, when was this? Because I've never heard of, this was probably the first impact, real impact ethical banking actually that exists, because I haven't familiarized with any other similar project. So...
Yeah, we set the bank up in Spain in 2004, and we worked for 4 years to build it. So when I entered the team, it was 2001. But really, the bank is a European bank, so it's set up in the Netherlands. It was set up in the Netherlands in the 80s, in 1980. So it's already over 40 years. And is now also part of a big network of about 60 or so, about 70 now, I think, banks all over the world that share similar principles and values. And it's called the Global Alliance for Banking on Values. And it's a large organization. So it's not only Triodos on its own, but it's actually a network of banks. So it's great. So
sharing values and perspectives and things that resonate with, the principles of this organization. It sounds amazing. I'm already kind of stunned with this journey, and I'm not easily impressed, I have to admit.
Yeah.
But okay, and you were there actually setting the pillars, let's say, of this project back in 2004.
So we basically were, when I joined that team we were 8 people back then. We built the business plan for Triodos Bank in Spain, and we formally set up the bank. Also, I was a lawyer by training. I am a lawyer by training, so I did the legal work, but I also had to do the marketing communications work because it was a startup and we did everything. So also kind of building the brand in Spain, the products, like drafting a current account contract or savings account contract, and all from scratch, and copying others, of course, because what would you make up something that's already there. So it was a crazy period, very, very intense.
How many hours were you working a day?
I don't know, but by the 5th year, so once we launched and a year had passed since we launched, I felt like a squeezed lemon. So no one could take a drop out of me anymore. It's true that I had done it out of my own passion and my own energy for the project, and the clear truth that was coming out of that. So this needs to live. This type of bank needs to exist. It's very unique. It's still now very unique. And we need to make it work. So you devote your whole soul and your whole body and your whole mind to it. And you end up by burning up.
Yeah.
And it was 2005.
But still, I have to say that I prefer a burnout, which is for a good cause, rather than a bad burnout, actually. For
it's kind of a nice burnout.
It was it justifies the burnout, you know?
Yeah.
At least, I got squeezed out of my own passion, my values, my principles, my everything. And in order to give this and offer this to the world, it was not, about something unethical, evil, or, something that you didn't.
On the contrary. Yeah. It was the perfect cause. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So I decided to quit after a full process of not knowing, because at that point we didn't have a name for burnout. Like now it's very normal to talk about burnout, but back then I didn't know what it was. I was, getting home and crying for no reason and not figuring out what it was. Like, is it my partner? Is it, what is it? Not knowing. So I had to go through several months to find out what it was and to feel okay with leaving the bank, not feeling that I was kind of disappointing someone or disappointing myself, and feeling strong enough to just take that step without even having another job. Because of course, by that time, it wasn't easy for me to find a job that matched my values. And I had already experience working in an environment that is close to your values. So I didn't want to move away from that. So I thought, well, let's take some time. Let's see what comes up. And during the last 3 months before I left, I remember, because we gave this kind of grace period or so I was getting ready to go. And all of a sudden, I saw something that caught my attention. Actually, in our branch in Belgium, we were funding a fashion company with ethical values. We were funding this company as a bank. So that I hadn't seen before. And I thought, ethical fashion, sustainable fashion, this makes sense. And I thought there's something interesting here that I could develop. And I had never opened a Vogue magazine in my life. I was not into fashion.
You are one of the most multi-hyphenate women I've met out there. It's like,
and you haven't heard it all, so
I'm like halfway. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Moving into sustainable fashion. I will drop all the questions afterwards.
Right. So this was 2005 when sustainable fashion wasn't a word even, and I started by researching and meeting people. It was really surprising that once you put your word out there that, you're curious about this topic, and then all of a sudden, someone connects you to someone else that knows about this or works on this in Germany or in the Netherlands or in Turkey or whatever. So I was just researching about that and trying to find a way to work. To develop this and to work in this. And I started by just buying a plane ticket to Izmir, Turkey, to a conference that someone told me, if you want to develop this field in Spain, you need to get to Turkey and attend this conference. So I bought my ticket and went there. And that was the start of everything, of 11 years.
Of a new adventure.
In fashion and sustainability. That took me to, from consulting, because no one knew about this. So I had some knowledge that I had been acquiring throughout a few months or so. And so people approached me and we developed a few projects and taught at university as well at a fashion school in Madrid for another 3 years, drafting the first sustainability curriculum, only because the director was German. So she knew that she needed to get into sustainability with her students. And she knew I was kind of studying that and working on that, and she hired me. So we developed this first curriculum for sustainability and ethics in fashion. And then I started working for Textile Exchange, which is actually quite a big organization working in fashion and sustainability, kind of made up of, all the way from cotton growers, textile makers to brands, and supporting the industry to become more sustainable. So I worked there for a few years, and that's when I met the guy that was leading environmental sustainability at Inditex, which is the
of course,
owner of Zara and 8 other brands.
Yes, of course.
So one of the largest retailers in the world for fashion. And I started, first of all, consulting for them through my organization, because they had nothing. This guy was on his own, only person doing anything about environmental sustainability within a 16 billion revenue company.
Yeah. Which is to say, like, let's say that you kind of like implemented the first steps of seeing right now, like Zara saying that we're going to reach the goal of being 99% basically sustainable in 2024 or whatever.
Yeah, the environmental part at least, because at that point, Inditex and its brands, Zara and everyone, Oysho and all of those, they had already developed some strategy and some systems to support social rights in the supply chain. So working on the social side of the supply chain.
Okay.
Because there was already a lot of pressure being a listed company and having, different types of investors and lots of pressure also from the NGO world. So they had some systems in place.
They had to kind of like comply with all the ESG criteria. So at least for the social part, they were doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. ESG wasn't even a word there, but
it became a word like very, very recently. But let's say that, in terms of today.
Yeah, it was almost compliance.
Yes, it was compliance, basically. Yes.
Yeah, but also at that point, it was an issue that ran parallel to the business. So the business was doing what the business needed to do. And then the auditors, the social auditors were coming on the side to do what they could do just to keep the thing going, no?
Yeah, balance it out.
Yeah. So, this was about 2013 or so, around that, or 2010 or so when I started working with them. And then, so Antonio, this wonderful man, couldn't do it all. They didn't allow him to hire people. When they did allow him to hire one person, he said, okay, could you come? And I told them, I don't want to be employed by Inditex because that would mean a lot of things, amongst others moving to Coruña. And I need to believe that what we're building is true. And I don't know the company that well yet to know if it's true and it can go elsewhere beyond just a few tiny projects. And
so basically you were working as a freelancer.
I was working as a freelancer. So I told Antonio, what if I work full-time for Inditex? So I left the organization, the Textile Exchange that I was working with, but I understood that there was something important that we could do together at Inditex because I trusted him. I didn't fully trust the organization because this is a 150,000 people organization. But I knew that there was something that we could maybe help make happen there.
It would bring like a tiny change, and then you can always benefit from the compound of change actually that happens in a company, let's say. Okay,
yeah. So we decided to arrange it that way, that I was a freelancer, but working full-time for Inditex. So I had my Inditex hat on all the time. And I even hired people because we couldn't hire any more as employees of Inditex. So I hired people myself to build this team and to make it happen, like training. We did tons of trainings for designers, buyers, also suppliers. So we traveled to Bangladesh, China, India, Vietnam, different places.
Supply chain.
Yeah, supply chain.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did quite a lot of work. We set up the first lines in organic cotton, recycled polyester, tencel, all these more sustainable materials. Also, of course, it was really helpful to have organizations asking and demanding from Inditex to change certain things. We had Greenpeace with their toxic campaign, so that also helped us do more work in terms of the dyes and the chemicals that go into the clothing. We had Canopy Planet, also from Canada, working on forest and endangered forests and trying to ensure that the viscose type fibers don't come from endangered forests. So that helped. It was a wonderful
wonderful experience.
Yeah.
That is like, it literally gives me chills and goosebumps, and it makes my heart like say, okay, like there is always hope and change out there, like true, real change that brings like a lot of value, because it's not something that it's temporary. It's something that, it's buildable, and you're building it up. And you are creating it, and you are creating impact.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was wonderful to see how the allies within the company grew as well. How once you start talking about these topics, environmental sustainability, values, etc., with designers and with buyers and with suppliers, they all want to belong. They all want to belong to something that is bigger than themselves, that aligns with their values. So they all relate to what we're talking about.
And it's not just, one crazy activist or a few crazy activists, let's say, because, this has been like a category in its own for such a long time. But it's like literally right now, it's a movement of actually bringing like good and values like in the whole, in our whole planet, and basically profiting also from it.
Yeah.
Okay. I like where this is going.
Yeah. So really interesting years, completely different systems, and different, if you think the banking world, very different from the fashion world. But I enjoyed it a lot. I worked with friends. I met new friends. But we built this whole culture around sustainability that made a lot of sense for a lot of people. So that was really powerful. And then we decided, okay, we need a new strategy because the 5-year strategy is almost over. So let's build a new environmental strategy that serves the next 5 years with a visionary, approach. And we worked on a very amazing collaborative, co-creative project with suppliers and with NGOs, and we pulled out this wonderful, what we thought was a wonderful strategy without its numbers. But it meant that Inditex had to adopt a longer term view, a different view on their business. They had to see what was going on around them and the changes that the world was going through, the business world, the fashion world was going through in the sense of sustainability and all of that. And really commit to making a change that was not just a little bit, like not incremental, but really a systemic change in the long term. And so we presented the strategy to the CEO because it meant also that we needed to increase the budget because we needed to invest like any other retailer was doing, or some other retailers were doing, investing on their supply chains, investing on the cotton growers to grow organic cotton instead of regular cotton, or investing in ensuring that there was technology to transform cellulose into new cellulose, or, use cellulose into new cellulose. So you had to actually invest because the textile supply chain is quite, I don't want to say poor, but their investment capacity is limited. So they need the retailers to invest with them. Okay. So that needed to be done.
Basically, it was a much more holistic approach in order to be able to bring this sort of systemic change. And I know this very well because this is exactly what resonates with me and my values and everything that I tell, the way that I advise on companies as Enable Good is like you need to be able to, how do I say it, not just take pretty pictures, on something, but actually like put value on something and really build, this kind of change needs time and it needs building and consistency, let's say.
Yeah. But bringing that type of change into a fast fashion giant was not obvious, and the CEO didn't see it the first year.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, so I thought, let's wait another year and see. And we waited for another year. So the next budget decision timeline came again, and he didn't see it again. Like, he didn't make the decision to make the investments that were needed and to really go for it. It was too scary. Like,
Sandra, were these, I'm sorry to ask, but I'm going to have to wear like a little bit of my ancient lawyer hat. But were these like commitments that they had as a huge group, like Inditex had to make? Were these like kind of like guidelines? How were they supposed to implement these changes?
Well, it was actually a strategy to move away from very polluting materials, very unsustainable materials, to a little bit more sustainable materials. Yes. We didn't even, at that point, invited them to change their business model, which is what the world was calling them to do and is still calling them to do, because fast fashion isn't sustainable, and I don't think it can ever be sustainable. But we understood that you need to take it one step at a time. So you cannot tell Sarah, you're going to be out of the market, within 10 years or 15 years, because there's basically not going to be resources for you. So you're going to try, at that point we couldn't go with that. But we could say, okay, let's try and at least start building, and making those clothes out of more sustainable materials, recycling, using the concepts of circular economy, which at that time, 2016 or so, it wasn't as pop and as cool as it is now. But circular economy might make sense for sustainable fashion. So that's what we were presenting in the environmental strategy. It was absolutely volunteer for the company to kind of adopt it or not, and they decided to go much more slower and not to take those steps that I felt were needed if I was to stay in a company.
Actually, time proves it.
Yeah.
We're in today, like in 2023, it's like it makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were right from the beginning.
Yeah. But maybe I was a little bit too early, maybe, but I didn't want to stay, running this thing that was just doing small incremental changes. And that was also a time where the communications department started to become interested in what we were doing and showing it out to the world and showing off, actually.
Yes.
And maybe making it bigger than it really was. And so it was a no-go for me. It was like, well, I'm no one to control the communications department, and I'm no one to implement this strategy that I think makes sense. And of course, it needs the buy-in from the whole business. So, obviously. And I wasn't in a position to continue what, the small incremental changes that we were doing. Is like, we've done it, so now. No,
it's exhausting. No. It's like speaking about something that actually, like, you basically do not see the same horizon, or you just see like a part of the horizon. Yeah. It's like exhausting.
Yeah.
No. And it's like, do it by yourself, take the marketing department as they usually do, because it always involves the marketing department, making it bigger than it actually is. So if this is like, if you're not in parallel, I totally get it,
Yeah.
Okay.
So I left my team there. So the team that was working with me is still there, supporting the internal team at Inditex. So I feel very proud about that, because we built this kind of horizontal team that even if I left, they could stay if they felt that was they wanted to do. So they stayed. And I went back to Triodos, to the bank.
Wow.
And back to Madrid, which was kind of crazy as well. It was my third time in Madrid, and I wasn't quite ready for that. But this was 2017.
Okay, this is like a caravan story. But with like huge, like groups and, like basically huge companies and wow.
Yeah, but I put it like I spent 10 years in banking and 10 years in sustainable fashion. So that's how I make it simple.
You don't make it simple. I'm terribly sorry, but no.
Yeah.
It's like I have to start taking notes actually, because, the pathway is like so unbelievable. Like, if I'm allowed to say, it's like, from lawyering, from human rights, from UNICEF, from banking to Inditex to sustainable fashion. It's like, obviously I can see the thread behind it.
Yeah.
But it's a very, very, it's a very important career. It's like something that people do not let go and come over here back into Cantabria and actually, like, if I may say so, give it back to me and other women who have very much profited of your experience.
Yeah. And there's still one step that gets me from, moving from Inditex to Triodos until here, which is those years at Triodos, the last 5 years or so, 2017, 2022, where I found a very different organization, of course, because it was 300 people in Spain, 1,500 in Europe. The banking system had changed because of the crisis in 2008 to the 2008 whatever crisis, and the regulation was different. I mean, lots of pressure also on smaller banks, a lot of focus from the central banks to concentrate into bigger banks, and so it's a difficult place to be.
I know, because I also come from the banking system. At that moment, like, smaller banks were over-regulated, with actually the regulations that were supposed to be applied to bigger banks. So they were like quite suffocating.
Yeah, exactly. But luckily, I came into the marketing communications world within Triodos, but during those years, many of the learnings that I had been having in the latest years kind of crystallized and became more clear for me, both personal and professional. So on the personal level, this was my third time in Madrid. I had escaped from Madrid 2 times before, and I wasn't ready to go back. But anyway, I did it because I also wanted to contribute to the development of this bank. There was a different director also in Spain whom I liked, and I also kind of supported his vision, and so it made sense at that point. And I told him, I'm gonna try. I don't know if I'm gonna make it, but I'm gonna try. So I moved back to Madrid, and I realized that I wanted to be close to my people, to my family, to my friends, and this was too far away. So I wanted to come up north again to the northern part of Spain. And also I decided that I wanted to live in the countryside rather than in a town or in a city. I wanted to be closer to nature. I've always been very curious about the whys of things and life. And I'm like, well, I'm going to try and move a little bit closer to where life actually happens. So that also I wanted to do. And from a professional level, I also realized that I'm not a corporate person, and I'm not I don't have a desire to become a corporate person. And actually, what does the world need? I thought to myself, and it's probably not so many like heroic leaders, but more facilitators and more people that try to get their ego to their side or have it under control and actually help create safe spaces or brave spaces, as we say now, and help people understand each other. There's so much polarization in the world. So, and I've always asked myself that question, right? So what is the world demanding from me now? Where is the world now, and what can I contribute? So once 5 years pass by, and I have these cycles of 5 years, more or less.
I have a 7.
Yeah. Yeah, 7 makes more sense, actually. From an esoteric perspective, it all makes more sense. But
nothing makes sense, actually. I don't believe in this word anymore.
Yeah, well, at least you have, somewhere to say, okay, 7 years.
Usually it's 7 for me. It has extended to 9, but I'm like reaching my limit over here. I'm stretching it out.
Yeah.
I want to live in nature, closer to nature as well. I find this like very rewarding and also very soothing, and also it generates ideas.
Actually does. You have less inputs from, say, lights, publicity, people, everything. So it's a different type of input. Anyway, I think it depends on maybe the stage of life that you're in.
Yes, exactly.
That. But for me, it made a lot of sense at that point. And I also said, okay, I've been doing this for 5 years. I did what I was asked to do in the first place. I think this team can move on without me now. And also, if I'm not there, other people can flourish and I'll actually take it to the next level. So it just makes sense for me to, well, first of all, I was almost also on the edge of another burnout. Of course, I was going to say older, but also wiser.
So I would use the word wiser.
Wiser, and
experienced. Maybe,
also, but I've been, it was quite stressful and always to the task, and I was feeling that you need to keep your limits all the time and holding your limits all the time, and it's tiring. You can never let go and relax,
You move basically from deadline to deadline, to deliverable to deliverable, It's like you're...
I'm also walking to-do list.
Yeah, me Me too.
Yeah.
I still am. I'm like, I cross, my to-do list. Yes, exactly. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, we're a community of women with to-do lists.
Exactly. So I wanted to stop being a walking to-do list, but also I wanted to come back north and try to do something more aligned to whom I felt I was at that point. So I am now, because it was 2022, and I actually took a sabbatical, which I had never done before. So I took a sabbatical first because we moved with my partner, we moved up north. Well, I can tell you the details of that story, but it's too long. But we moved here in 2021, and after 6 months, I quitted my job, and I tried to reconnect with the region where I had grown up, where I grew up, and also meet new people, because I didn't know anyone here. Like, my few good friends that I had growing up, they're somewhere else, they're not here. So I had to get used to the place, get used to my neighbors, talk to my neighbors, meet them, build also my professional networks and try to see who's doing what. That actually interests me in terms of social business, people that are interested in building a different kind of business with purpose, beyond profit. And that's what I started doing during my sabbatical. So I actually didn't go away. I actually stayed and didn't want to go away. I wanted to stay and actually get grounded in my new place. And through that time, I was also thinking, okay, what's my next step? What's my next step professionally speaking? I don't feel like being employed by someone. I don't think I fit there at this point. And I also learned about horizontal organizations and self-managed organizations. So I feel I'm not ready for what's there now. I need to work for on my own as a freelance, or build my own, network.
Basically, you were observing. And I like, when people don't just, jump into things, but they take like a step back and say, okay, let's observe, see where I am, see what I can bring into the world, see what this community needs me to do.
Exactly.
And I think it's very, very wise.
Yeah.
Okay, continue to impress me, please.
I had also been fortunate enough so I'm also serving a few boards. For a few years, I've been serving a few boards of trustees, of directors, and it's an area that I like and I enjoy. And I figured, is there anyone, because I tend to not do the things that are already being done, and I try to, this is being done, there are all these people working in this field, good enough. But there's this whole world of governance and ownership that within the corporate sustainability world is not really being addressed that much. I mean, some people are working and there are very interesting things happening, like in the academic world, and in Germany also the Purpose Economy organization is working on stewardship ownership, which is connected to this thing about governance and how do we need to govern organizations and businesses in particular in this new paradigm that we're living, and where companies need to serve the common good.
Yes.
And make profit, but because otherwise they can't survive. But they need to serve the common good. So I became
I believe very much actually in combining both. This is all I have been talking about recently, and it's like you don't have to be the devil, or the money actually doesn't have to like come from sources which are unethical, etc., etc. Yeah. But you can actually like make a lot of money by doing good.
And also how much money do you need? How much money is fair to pay back to the investor? That kind of thing. So I had like 3 spaces where I wanted to be active. One was this governance and ownership within the business world, and especially for purpose-driven organizations. I also wanted to be more of a facilitator rather than a leader. So stewardship rather than a leader, and be able to facilitate, the kind of community that we've been building here in Cantabria for the last month, and other instances where I could be useful for that. And out of curiosity, I was, and this connects us as well, I believe, I started interviewing social entrepreneurs in Cantabria, because those were the people that I wanted to meet when I came. And I thought, well, I could have these wonderful conversations just for myself, or I could actually share it with the world, share them with the world, and maybe inspire other people to see that this is possible, and also give these guys visibility.
We're so much more connected than I thought.
Yeah, so what an adventure, and that's been great. So together with a friend who's a photographer, because I wanted to make it really visual and really nice, also from an aesthetics perspective, we started interviewing different teams, because I'm not so interested in solo entrepreneurs. I believe more a solo entrepreneur also works within a team always and has support, from other people. And so I wanted to see how those people were. So I was interested in teams, couples teams, where women had a leading role. So I wasn't interested in an all men's team. I was interested in a team that could, that had women leading, and as the founders.
Yes, the founders, the CEOs, the people actually who really put themselves out there and do what normally it's a man's job to do. Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's been a wonderful experience and adventure, because I thought maybe I find 3 or 4, but it's actually never ending. There's so many amazing women in teams out there doing very interesting things. A lot in the rural areas as well, and I became interested in this field of rural versus urban, and how do we keep population in the urban, in the rural, sites of the world, and this made a lot of sense. So we started publishing at a newspaper, national newspaper, but the regional version of it, which is also a very, very much aligned with our vision and our values. And I started this past summer publishing every 15 days, and it's been a wonderful. So now I'm trying to integrate, so I was trying to integrate at one point. So this interest for social entrepreneurs, this interest for facilitation, this interest for working with purpose-led business or purpose-driven business especially in terms of governance and ownership, because there are a lot of other consultants on sustainability that might support them in other areas, but I'm more interested in this. And of course, I can also support purpose-led business on other areas, but with a focus maybe on that. So I tried to bring this all together because it made sense for me. It's all me. So, and I didn't want to separate it. And in fact, it's all about...
All you is kind of like a whole world.
Yeah. It's me.
Like the you part is not a tiny part, it's like the whole world.
Yeah.
But questions are going to come a little bit later.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
But yeah,
tell me.
I'm 48 now.
Okay.
And I realized that I'm all this dimensional. I'm not one dimensional, and I don't want to stay focused on just one thing at this point, because I've been learning about myself that I have different things to offer and different things that I'm connected to that I can contribute to.
This is like, I just want to make a point. The world has been very sectoral and very monomaniacal about its own vision and the way that things should work. For me, it's very important as women, especially because I believe that we kind of like have this superpower of working with different skill sets and wearing one too many hats at the same time. I believe that the world needs more of people with experience in different fields and like skill sets that they develop in order to be able to service. Yes.
Totally. Yeah.
I really embrace this.
Yeah.
This sort of like, for me, this is like a way of living and supporting and servicing others. It's not about, over specializing in one area in your life and like saying, oh yes, I am this and I do this. No, you're not. Yeah. This is not just your identity. You do like a ton of other things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And maybe for a heart surgeon, it's very interesting to be super specialized.
Yes.
Because we need a heart surgeon.
Yeah, exactly. I get it.
Yeah, but for the rest of us,
cutting people open, you know,
you can let go and just,
and saving lives, of course.
Because life is complex and it's all of these things together.
Yes.
It just makes sense that we can approach life as it is, or more aligned with what it is. So for me, it's all about humanizing the economy.
Yes.
And
I like this.
Yeah, and it's all about providing the tools to purpose-driven organizations to flourish, because I do really believe that they are the companies that are going to set what success is, and they're going to be successful now and in the future. And that's what we need, these types of companies that set themselves for trying to contribute to a social challenge or an environmental challenge, or and these are the companies that we need. So I want to support them. That's where I want to put my energy. I'm okay with Inditex and whomever being out there. I just don't want to put my energy there. And I'm sure that they have really strong policies now towards sustainability and all of that. But I decided I wanted to put my energy here with these people that are actually driving change and defining the new economy, right? And the new business and the new success for business.
So basically, in order for me to benefit from this well of knowledge, I have to move to Cantabria.
Well, there's the digital world now, Vida, and we can
You're really not convincing me. But anyway, it's like, so it's so beautiful here. But I would even take it under consideration.
But, and Cantabria is a great place, actually, because there's a lot of people coming back, like you've met already, and a lot of people that were here and were a little bit under the radar who are now flourishing and being more visible. So we're creating these networks, and it's all making more sense. Also more opportunities, rather than if you go to Madrid or to Barcelona, like everything's done in a way. I don't know how it is in
it's like it's kind of like overpopulated and over marketed, let's say. It's kind of like there's this posh and polished side of things that does not resonate with me anymore. And I really want to be able to shed more light into efforts like that happen in a more kind of like not off the grid, because I think it's always a combination of things, but it's like, let's be more like embracing this part of our life as well.
And also more local, maybe local solutions, all the regenerative principles about having local solutions. And
exactly, it doesn't all has to be centralized. It's like, let's like see how communities work, and okay,
so it makes more sense, and this is how I ended up.
So how are we going? What is like the connection that? First of all, how you ended up here is like, I haven't discussed this with you because I really wanted it to be a material during the podcast. I'm like, but I have to say no, because there are a lot of things. It's not about your career path, but also about the values that resonate with you, that also align with me and with what I want to do in the world. So it's really this kind of thing. A career path is just a career path, but the holistic approach is more what interests me. And what I want to say is like, I had no idea that I was like literally like benefiting from such a mentor, because you have been a mentor and a guide actually to this very transformational journey for me. And I hope that in the very near future, we're going to see some really amazing steps that both enable good and me as LP that we are going to take also via the podcast, the Good Stories. I haven't really decided on the title again, but we'll discuss about it. And the way that actually you can share good, you can empower good, and you can connect good. And I think this is like a story of its own. And this also I have to say that this is like a thread that connects both of us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And how are we ending, like coming to your product, La Negocianta. So am I pronouncing it correct?
La Negocianta. So La Negocianta started being the section for the articles at the newspaper. So we called it La Negocianta. I actually came up with this name and no one in my surrounding liked it, but then I decided to go with it anyway, and all of my friends and colleagues within the communication world loved it.
Okay. Can I ask you, what is it? For me, it resonates a lot with your facilitator capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But what does it exactly mean? Why did you choose this?
Yeah, La Negocianta is actually kind of a made-up name, but it is a word that exists in Spanish. When you tell someone, eres un negociante or eres una negocianta. So negociante comes from trading, so it has to do with business, like negotiating. It could be trading or negotiating. And it's a person who gets it her way or his way. And it's a feminine side, so her way. And since I wanted to build these stories around entrepreneurs and around women entrepreneurs, and I wanted to make sure that they told stories about people and business, but not just stories of, from a life perspective or other angles. I wanted those stories to bring value to the business community, to be like the orange pages in a newspaper that normally carry the economic and business stories, and they're never too interesting anymore. And I thought, I'm going to create the orange pages that I would read, and
yes.
So the name resonates with that.
Times, the orange section.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
right.
it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to resonate with something about business, so it wasn't just I'm doing good things or whatever, but I wanted to resonate with the business world. But it's kind of a fun name as well. It's something funny about it, and like there's a trick behind it or something. So it calls people's attention, and it's new.
Yes.
So.
And I really, really, really like it.
Yeah. So then I made it the name for my whole activities. I didn't want to use my own name. So I felt it's rather than having a blah name like purpose driven or something like that. I want to, I'm going to use this name that I came up with, and also resonates with me.
I think it's cheeky and it's a little bit sassy, and it's it's kind of like, how do I say it? It's, it makes you want to go into it. Like, it's like a mediator, but not really a mediator, but it's like somebody who negotiates and is really good at negotiating. And please trust me, Sandra is excellent at negotiating. It's like, and she gets it her way, I have to say. And luckily she gets it her way. I want to say that how do you see this project actually flourishing even more? Where would you like to see it? How would you like to see it grow?
Interesting, because it's very new, and I have more of a vision for myself rather than for the business, because that I
even better
always adjust. So for me, it's about this new space that I found where I really enjoy my work. Like, I enjoy every day. I wake up and I'm a happy person, and I want to start doing what I'm off to do every day. I want that joy to stay. And so that's success for me, also in a professional world. So I'd like to work with other people in kind of a network or a team. That would be great. Working with people that I'm aligned with, like-minded, that have complementary skills. But essentially, what I'd like to preserve is that joy that is with me when I wake up in the morning. Yeah.
God, thank you so much. Please keep it. And bring it more to the rest of us.
Yeah.
I want to say, yes, but I'm so thankful and so grateful for meeting with you, for finally getting to know your story, because I think you have, like, for the time being, this is like an amazing story. This is like, how I don't even know how to express myself. You know, it's like somebody that, or someone's pathway in life that you admire so much, because this is exactly, you know, what I would have loved to do and what inspires me to do.
But what you're also doing.
Yes.
Yeah. So I find a lot of parallel in our
in our trajectory.
Trajectory. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for being invited and a guest over here.